Sanjay Mala Kungda Dupedu Chobar Kanji Ngara Doji Chang Trinjin Lame Shabla Soa Tep Kanyam Doa Doa Emarab So Kanyam Doa Doa Emarab So Kanyam Doa Doa Emarab So. Okay, then at the outset, please endeavor to listen to the teachings tonight for the sake of all sentient beings. Arouse bodhicitta, which is the overall topic of this text, of these teachings. And we are in the section that Shantideva presents that prevent that bodhicitta from becoming corrupted or lost. And as he says, it's we lose the thread of our bodhicitta motivation, our bodhicitta action, because of carelessness, mindlessness, lack of introspection, and anger. So we are in the patience chapter, which is the antidote, the remedy for anger, which destroys our bodhicitta. And we are at verse 112. I always kind of like to put everything in a context of where we all are in this, but I think just to mention now that having gone through the reflections that Shantideva has presented as to the various objects that we should be patient with, and the different ways that we defeat or uproot or antidote various forms of anger towards various objects. In the previous half a dozen or so verses, he has brought out how when those forces of hostility or irritation arise, and we are able to arouse patience in the face of suffering, in the face of humiliation and so forth, that those who have been perceived as mistreating us are now put in a different viewed differently, and we are seeing them and perceiving those from the point of view of how they have helped us in reminding us of bodhicitta, how they have helped us in bringing out patience and become, instead of the object of our irritation, they become the objects that we show patience towards and act kindly to, that they've been a benefactor. And so that theme was presented in the previous verses. And then at 112, begins the section, the last section of the chapter, of how beings are actually perceived as objects, or not objects, but we develop respect for beings as being part of our path to awakening. So then in verse 112, he says, and so the mighty sage has spoken of the field of beings as well as of the field of conquerors. In other words, in relation to the hostile, those who treat us in a hostile or aggressive or uncomfortable, make us uncomfortable, we accept, or we can accomplish patience. We can accomplish patience and other virtues. Of course, the mighty sage here refers to, of course, the Buddha, and how in the Buddha's own path to awakening, he has relied on beings as much as he relied on the inspiration and orientation of the Buddhas. So the 112. So the field of conquerors. Conquerors here means Buddhas. The field of conquerors, meaning all the Buddhas. In the commentary, Genpo Kunbel quotes from a sutra of perfectly pure aspiration, where it says, in the words of the Buddha here, because it says the mighty sage has spoken of that. So he's referenced that from a sutra saying, this is in the words of the Buddha, is saying, formerly upon the field of beings and on the field of Buddha did I base myself. It is thus that I harvested the endless qualities of Buddhahood. So that's the reference of what is being mentioned there, that beings as well as Buddhas are we could say, the fertile ground for the seed of Buddhahood to reach perfection. And many who brought happiness to beings have passed beyond attaining to perfection. So this has been the path of making others happy and making the Buddhas and delighting the Buddhas. This twofold practice, or twofold called field of merit, is how the Buddha himself recounts, and many Buddhas, all those who have attained enlightenment. First, to attain enlightenment, then we need to arouse bodhicitta. And bodhicitta is aroused on the basis of our our perception, our sensitized perception of samsara and the beings that are afflicted by the suffering in samsara, and how that arises in us a compassion and the wish to free them from suffering. Then we, through the blessings of the Buddha, then we develop an aspiration to perfect the source of our compassion that is imbued with all the powers and qualities of enlightenment as the best possible way to free others from suffering and lead them to place them in a state of liberation. And so in the beginning, we focus on sentient beings and develop love and compassion. And then in our practice of bodhicitta, then we have the aspiration bodhicitta, which is the bringing to maturity or bringing to an all-pervasive quality the practice of love and compassion and joy and equanimity, which has as its initial basis sentient beings. So then as we progress towards our own awakening based on sentient beings, then we also direct our wisdom, our knowing mind towards the Buddhas. And practice, for instance, taking refuge. Taking refuge is relying on the Buddhas. And this bodhicitta, and our love and compassion is based on sentient beings. And through as we evolve through the bodhisattva path and attain awakening, then there is our path, our practice is one of taking that reliance we have on the Buddhas and that reliance we have on the sentient beings and bringing those two together, bringing sentient beings to Buddhahood. Then in the next verse, thus the state of Buddhahood with all its qualities. The state of Buddhahood depends on beings and on Buddhas equally. What kind of practice is it then that honors only Buddhas but not beings? So when we feel contrary to this message, to this advice, then we should ask ourselves, why don't I respect both sentient beings and Buddhas? Why am I prejudiced towards only respecting the Buddhas and having all sorts of judgmental attitudes, disparaging attitudes towards sentient beings? The next verse, 114, and of course Shantideva here isn't saying that the sentient beings and Buddhas are sort of on the same footing as far as their qualities go. So he says here, not in the qualities of their minds, and read minds here as sort of the intentions of sentient beings and the intentions of Buddhas and Bodhisattvas are not equal. We acknowledge that, but in the fruits they give, they're alike. In the fruits they give, are they alike? So their excellence is, it says, in beings too, such excellence resides. That is to say, in that respect, they have excellences. They are possessed of excellence in respect to their contribution to our awakening. And therefore, beings and Buddhas are the same, are equal. That they are both acting, or they are both being the basis for Buddhahood. And we equally depend on them both. 115, then he says, offerings made to those with loving minds reveal the eminence of living beings. Offerings made to those with loving minds. Meaning virtue that is gained by making offerings to practitioners who are absorbed in meditation that is on the level of all-pervasive love. Offerings made to them, based on that the results of those offerings offered to that practitioner results in the results occur quickly in this life, often. And so that's the eminence or the excellence of living beings are reflected in that quality and merit, and continuing, and merit that accrues from faith in Buddha shows in turn the Buddha's eminence. So again, comparing or equalizing sentient beings and the Buddha. Here then, just when you have, if you make a very small offering with reverence and devotion and faith in the Buddha, even a very small offering, how do you say, draws or propels one to enlightenment. And the virtue of that is kind of has an inexhaustible quality. Many stories we read in the sutras how people filled with devotion on just seeing a Buddha walking towards them and then having no offerings and picking up a stone and throwing it, or having only a couple of beans. One story is throwing it, and one landed in the bowl of the previous Buddha, and that interdependence and that devotion in that child, then he received the prophecy of becoming a Buddha in the future, and so forth. So just these kinds of things, that's the excellence of the Buddhas. And then making offerings to those who are still ordinary sentient beings but have love in their meditation, then that's their excellence. And 116 says, although not one of them is equal to the Buddhas, who are oceans of perfection, because they have a share in bringing forth enlightenment, beings may be likened to the Buddhas. oceans of perfection. I think usually this means qualities, the oceans of qualities. To the Buddhas who are oceans of perfection. That doesn't, how do you have oceans of, it's the oceans of excellent quality, the unbounded qualities of Buddhahood. They're not, sentient beings don't have, they're not on that level, but they are on the level of participating in bringing forth our enlightenment. If you want to know, what those qualities are, what are the qualities of enlightenment, then there's a very good few pages in Jigme Lingpa's Treasury of Precious Qualities, the Yunten Sut of Jigme Lingpa. It's kind of in the appendix says qualities, excellent qualities of Buddhahood or something like enlightenment. All the kinds of the 10 powers, the 10 strengths, the 4 fearlessnesses, many things. It's good to recollect, to know those, to be able to recollect, particularly as if we're practicing refuge. If we're taking refuge in sort of our ideal model of Buddhahood in the form of the Buddha or Guru Rinpoche or Vajradhara or others, then when we reflect on who it is we're taking refuge, then we should know who we're taking refuge. Who means what are their qualities, not just the name, but what qualities do they have? Buddhism doesn't leave enlightenment as just some mysterious, unspeakable kind of beyond our comprehension state. A great body of sutras are there. One of the qualities of Buddha is fearlessness. The 4 fearlessnesses, and one of those are one aspect of those fearlessnesses that the Buddha is fearless about speaking out of the qualities of enlightenment, his enlightened mind. What is a Buddha? You have to have a fearlessness. So anyway, there's probably other sources to understand what it is we're striving for. And when we talk about Buddhahood and enlightenment and so forth, but just occurs, that's one very cogent presentation of that. Okay, I think that, yeah. Then 117 says, if of such a gathering of supreme excellence, a tiny part appeared in certain beings, the 3 worlds made in offering to them would be a very little thing. So if an ordinary person, a practitioner or an ordinary being, had even just a small grain of those qualities that were mentioned, then if someone could muster together all the wealth and riches of the whole universe and make an offering to that ordinary being just based on some small measure of those qualities. Here he says that would be considered kind of not really enough, almost, you could say. It wouldn't be those qualities would warrant a much greater outpouring of veneration and generosity and so forth to honor that person. That's just to kind of magnify or bring out the qualities of enlightenment. Since there lies in beings a share in bringing forth the supreme and enlightened state, by virtue of this parity alone, it's right that I should reverence them. So, so beings actually, we can think of beings as actually being possessed of a part that they play. They play a part in eliciting Buddhahood, and our cultivation of these, our cultivation and training in these qualities that we strive for the benefit of beings. And so we should revere, respect and revere beings because of the part they play by virtue of this parity, meaning the similarity. Just because of that one similarity in how they play a part in our path, then it's right. It's proper to revere them, to respect, that they should be respected by us and gratified by us, so supported and gratified. Then the next section here is specifically oriented around our wish to cause our wish to rejoice the minds of the Buddhas, to delight or rejoice the minds of the Buddhas, and how by honoring sentient beings we delight the Buddhas. So that's here we're talking 119 says how the Buddhas are my true unfailing friends. Basically, the Buddhas are thought to be the friends of every being. The Buddha takes all beings as they're the ally and supporter of all beings. And they do so, they're friends in a very unbiased way. Just like the Buddha's cousin? Yeah, his cousin and his son, the son of his father's brother. His cousin, Devadatta. He had some accomplishment as a disciple of the Buddha, but then he, through his jealousy, he developed the wrong view towards Shakyamuni Buddha and gathered others around him, and it was had negative. He was the one who kind of first split the Sangha, which is considered to be karmically very difficult to purify, and also conspired on many times to harm and kill the Buddha. But the Buddha always regarded him in what's thought of as a very compassionate way. And he said that Rahula, which was the Buddha's son, that the Buddha had a warm feeling towards both Devadatta, the same as his own son, that kind of unbiased. It's beyond our human relationships, beyond biology, but just on on the basis of Buddha's love and compassion. He was the friend of every being and had reverence for every being without bias. The Buddhas are my, the true, I don't know about my true, it's really the Buddhas are the true and unfailing friends of all. Boundless are the benefits they bring in this life, to me, in this life and in the future. And since the Buddha is friends with all, then that's another reason to also share in being kind towards all beings. How else may I repay their goodness but by making living beings happy, but by aiding beings where I can and benefiting them. By helping beings, we repay the ones who sacrifice their lives for us and plunge into the hell of unrelenting pain. This refers to the Buddhas who always entered into treacherous and dangerous and horrible realms of existence in order to just shake somebody's hand or just bring somebody forward out of that suffering. And never hesitated to sacrifice their lives for beings, even if it meant going into a tortured place. Whatever was needed to benefit even just one being, that's who we're talking about. That's the level of friendship and helper that the Buddha is towards sentient beings. So should beings therefore do great harm to me, I will strive to bring them only benefit. So if beings, if I'm in a good mood and somebody and another kind of destroys my good mood by their grumpiness, then I'll submit to it and bring them and be kind and show them patience. In other words, when people do something to ruin us, ruin our reputation, or steal our wealth, our possessions, or any of these other things, even just, what do you say, somebody shoots kind of bad vibes we feel from them or something, whatever it is that changes our good heart, kind of destroys it, then we should immediately turn that into we should interpret, reinterpret what just occurred as something that benefits us. Not just habitually, predictably react to things, but to be kind of new and reinterpret. They say in the commentary here, he speaks of how like a good disciple of a teacher, whatever the teacher does, a student is always kind of reinterpreting it. In other words, trying to always cast something in the best light. For those who have become my lords, in other words, for those Buddhas and Bodhisattvas who have become those who I respect and are my teachers, at times, they took care not even of their bodies, so for the sake of others, giving, benefiting, sacrificing their lives. Why should I, a fool, behave with such conceit towards others? Towards others. Why should I, a fool, behave with such conceit? When I'm with others or towards others, and because I'm here, a fool means we're kind of inept and stupid, really, we're clumsy regarding our behavior. We're not logical necessarily, or we sacrifice kindness, just like that, very easy. And so, if the Buddhas, comparing our reactions to difficulties with the Buddhas, why should I feel so conceited and superior to others? And then he says, why should I not become the slave of others? I don't know, I think it's more like, why should I not become sort of a faithful attendant that strives for the welfare of others, a respectful servant who strives for the welfare of others. It would be a endless and I'm not so sure fruitful commentary to just go over all of the translationese and all the different things, how they translated this, and oceans of, oceans of perfection compared to oceans of quality. And it's tempting, but I have great respect for these folks, these great translators and scholars and lamas who participated in this project. So I have nothing, I couldn't possibly be conceited about it, but that was for, I think for, American people, slave is a tough one to use when all we mean is someone that does something without being asked, someone who does something without any thought of being thanked. That kind of idea. Okay, then Buddhas, that's the idea here. So, in other words, we really need to position ourselves in relation to others according to our ability. And that ability, the scale of that ability is compared to Buddhas and Bodhisattvas. Buddhas are made happy by the joy of beings. Buddhas, and it says how Buddhas and Bodhisattvas, they regard all sentient beings like they do, like a mother cares for their only child. The Buddhas care for all sentient beings equally. And so when a child, the source of joy for a mother is the happiness of their child, without question. And so the happiness of sentient beings is the joy of the Buddhas. And conversely, They sorrow, they lament when beings suffer. When beings are harmed, they suffer, we say. By bringing joy to beings, then I please the Buddhas also. Just like someone who, tells a mother how cute their child is or how smart their child is. The mother feels happy. But if somebody does something bad to that child or complains about them, then the mother kind of feels sorrowful. So by pleasing the child, you please the mother without effort. It automatically pleases the mother. So it automatically pleases the Buddha when you benefit beings. And then again, conversely, it says, by wounding them, by harming beings, by offending beings, then I wound the Buddhas too. Then he presents here an example. Just as there's no sensual delight to please the mind of one whose body burns in fire, there's no way to please the great compassionate ones, the Buddhas, while we ourselves are causes of another's pain. So even if we make great offerings to the Buddhas, if also we're harming sentient beings, there's no way that offering is going to be produce the merit and virtue that we are expecting. And we can maybe relate sometimes how if someone's body, or if you're sick or in pain of such a nature that there's nothing is so enjoyable at that point. Even makes you even more aggravated to be some sense, taste, or something to look at, or something. When you're in such pain, it makes it even more aggravated, more painful, no relief. My mind goes to a few people who I know who, they have like these nerve disease where their whole body just fires suddenly, and they're just in that kind of torturous pain. So there's no way to please the Buddhas when we cause others to be in pain. And Khenpo Kunpel here, the commentator, also writes a paragraph, because he's a disciple, one of Paltro Rinpoche's great disciples. And here at this particular juncture, he also repeats what Paltro Rinpoche put in Words of My Perfect Teacher about all these religious, like lamas and religious Dharma practitioners who use meat and blood in what's called this marsur, this sur offering, which like we do in Rinpoche Composed, and we do here daily, this white sur, karsur, and there's also a marsur where you offer blood and meat and so forth to the deities, and Paltro Rinpoche really criticized these people, and compared it to killing a mother's child and offering it to her as a dinner. When you use the flesh of a sentient being and offer it to the Buddhas, how could they, he says, how could you possibly accumulate merit, or how could you possibly delight the Buddhas by offering the flesh and blood of the object of Buddha's love and compassion? So he inserted that in there too, at that point. So think about it. We eat meat and we make offerings to the Buddhas of this meat, So then in 124, I'm not preaching to not eat meat, by the way. I don't get into that. I'm just repeating what Palta Rinpoche and Khenpo Kunbel said. So you make your own decisions. If you're uncertain about to do or not to do, not to eat meat, then okay, we can talk. I'd be happy. But if you don't want to talk about it and you just want to eat, then that's fine. Okay, moving on. 124 now. Reflecting on what he has said, since this is kind of a transcription of Shantideva's Dharma talk, okay? And so then, in considering everything that Shantideva has said up to this point, he says here then he's kind of making a confession. The damage I have done to beings saddens all the Buddhas in their great compassion. Therefore, all these evils I confess today and pray that they will bear with my offenses. So everything he's done by body, speech, and mind throughout his past lifetimes up to the present lifetime, all the negative actions of motivated by desire, anger, and so forth, the kleshas, then he's opening up and without concealing or dissimulating, without hiding under false pretenses, and with remorse, and praying that they will be purified by that, by divulging, by opening up and admitting these things. Then through the power of that, then he's praying that that will purify all of the harm he has caused the Buddha's children and the Buddha. And continuing then going forward, that I might rejoice the Buddha's hearts, henceforth I will be master of myself, the servant of the world. I shall not seek revenge, though crowds may trample on my head or kill me. So he's saying that in order to delight and rejoice the minds of the Buddhas and the Bodhisattvas, then he won't. He'll become master of myself. He says, I will subjugate. I will tame my mind of malevolence towards beings, and I will tame my pride and my arrogance and conceit That means master of myself, means tame and subjugate your ill will. The servant of the world. Yes, I will be the servant of the world. I will serve sentient beings, benefit them, always think how to help, how to help. I shall not seek revenge, even if I have the opportunity or the capacity to pay back a harm or to retaliate. He's saying here, I shall not retaliate, even if somebody tramples on my head or kills me. He's making a resolution then to accept everything with kind of reverence, with that perception of honoring sentient beings. And by doing that, then the great and compassionate Buddhas and Bodhisattvas will rejoice. And he says, so may the guardians of the world rejoice by that, by my resolution and by my following through with that resolution. Next says, the great compassionate lords consider as themselves all beings. There is no doubt of this. Here, 82. Oh yeah, okay, so of course then here as when we first give rise to bodhicitta, then we are encouraged in the spirit of the Mahayana and gaining this spirit of the Mahayana view of sentient beings, how we should see sentient beings, relate to sentient beings. As a Mahayana trainee, it's taught how we should regard those who are, well, actually, of course, we're taught to regard all sentient beings as having at one time or another acted as our parents, our kind benefactors, those who were the most kind in a certain lifetime, that given infinite sentient beings, given infinite time, infinite rebirths, infinite possibilities, then at one time or another, everyone has been our parents, our mother, our father. And so we train in thinking, even bugs and lice and fleas and cockroaches, that they are basically our mother. All mother sentient beings, we say, are all mother sentient beings. And then specifically with regards to people, in training in this view, when people, we're encouraged to view older people as our parents, younger people as our own child, younger people as our own children, and then contemporaries, our people are same, kind of contemporaries, then we should regard them as our brothers and sisters in the same, we're the same, in the same family. as our siblings. We're all part of the same family, and so we all kind of, in that spirit of a family, kind of pulling together and having respect for one another as the best way to pull together as a family. So that's sort of the training at the outset on the Bodhisattva path. Then, further, on the path on the Bodhisattva path of what's called the path of accumulation, when we really enter into the kind of the core practice of the path of accumulation, then we train in the bodhicitta of equalizing all beings, thinking of ourselves as the equal of all beings from every point of view, and caring for others as we would care for ourselves. Enemies and friends, we can even visualize someone that's super irritating, or just hates us, or that we hate, and then someone that we are very affectionate towards and have received kindness and feel kind towards, and then one side, and then other side, the other one, and then reflect on what. Okay, it's easy to see the difference, but is there anything that they both share that's the same? Ask yourself, contemplate, what is it that this one, my enemy, has, and what is it that my mother or my friend has that's equal, that's the same? Then that's how we can develop equanimity, equalizing friends and enemies, become unbiased, because that discovery of the kind of the innate thrust towards achieving happiness, which they both share, the acknowledgement and internalization of that perception of others creates a very unbiased attitude towards all beings that can be refined in your daily life. That can be your stance that you've trained in on your cushion, so to speak. Then it becomes very perfected, okay, in your daily life. And so that's how one way you can practice this meditation that Buddhas and Bodhisattvas have engaged in the course of their Bodhisattva lifetimes of Bodhisattva training, when they're on the path of what's called the path of accumulation, which is the first path of the Bodhisattva path. And then on that basis, then when that becomes kind of more naturalized, forget perfection, it's just when we become used to that equalizing ourselves and others, then we can actually practice exchanging places with others. And when beings are uncomfortable or suffering, then we can take their place mentally and then give them our place, our comfort zone. And we can own their suffering and feel that they now are in my, have my qualities of love and compassion, patience, Dharma connection, whatever, whatever your qualities are. I mean, just to be able to think this way is an extraordinary quality. So it's not as if you don't have qualities if you're able to even conceive of equalizing yourself with others, to say nothing of exchanging places with others. So if you've been exposed to that thought, then you have incredible qualities that others could be possessed of. And then you meditate that they get them from you, and you take on all their stupidity and bewilderment and clumsiness and how to act and how to relate to their life and so forth. This is the practice of exchanging self and other on this path. Then, when that path joins with the path of what's called the path of seeing, this third bodhisattva path, where the practitioner has a glimpse of Buddha nature, has a glimpse of the natural state of non-duality, then that same equality of and exchanging with others occurs in the context of, or in the framework, if I can say that, of that non-duality, where self and other are seen or perceived as actually being equal. And then, of course, that progresses, you could say, that gaining familiarity with that, then at the point of Buddhahood, then that view of self and others, the equality, becomes all pervasive. And you you have realized your own, or you have brought forth, you have completely, thoroughly, and consummately made evident your Buddha nature, which has always been there, so to speak. And on that, then you cannot but see all beings from that perspective of seeing, all you see is the Buddha nature of others. So to see the Buddha nature of others is to even, and again, we can backtrack and just philosophically, according to our hunch about Buddha nature, all sentient beings have Buddha nature. It's one of our cliches, our jargon, is all sentient beings have Buddha nature. It's kind of the Mahayana slogan. Of course, and on the path, we realize it. We just conform, we thoroughly accept that fact by virtue of our own direct experience. But even as a beginner, and I'm sure you've all kind of, what do you say, fallen back on that motto of Mahayana. All sentient beings have Buddha nature. So to see all sentient beings with Buddha nature it just philosophically is it's sufficient unto the day. And so to see others according to their Buddha nature, rather than seeing them according to the helplessness of their ego, being confined by karma, which is the sort of the worldly perception of others, is we just see somebody's ego clinging and how they experience that according to their karma. But to kind of cut through that and see Buddha nature is to see them as Buddha. That's the great equalizer, the great equanimity of the four immeasurables, is to recognize or to become familiar with all sentient beings having Buddha nature. So to see your own, to get a glimpse of your own Buddha nature, then that projects as being having a glimpse of others' Buddha nature, flickers. Then to see that is to see them as Buddhas. And how all sentient beings being pervaded by this Tathagata Garbha, this Buddha nature, then that means that at no time has any sentient being ever been separate from enlightened body, speech, and mind. So anyway, that's a little bit, that's a kind of elaboration there. The great compassionate lords consider as themselves all beings. There's no doubt of that. Those whom I perceive as beings are Buddhas in themselves. Okay, that's the idea I was saying. So how can I not treat them with respect? So here we're talking, Shantideva is bringing out, as he does periodically in every topic here, is this kind of from the absolute aspect, you know. But it's the absolute aspect, but there's a bridge to it, you know. It's not just philosophical. There is a path. So working with sentient beings in that creative, new, kind of risky way is the Bodhisattva path. Okay, never mind. Okay, then, going on, at 127, this very thing, this accomplishing the happiness of beings, that is pleasing, you know, to the Buddha's hearts. It rejoices the Buddha's hearts, and perfectly secures the welfare of myself. So there's this twofold benefit. As I think I've mentioned, a twofold benefit. We practice virtue, practice meditation, dedicate merit for the twofold benefit. Benefit oneself by awakening. We're the ones who have to awaken. So we benefit ourselves by awakening, and we benefit others by acting from that stance. So there's benefiting oneself and benefiting others. That's called twofold benefit. Sometimes a twofold benefit, just as a footnote, means benefiting beings and benefiting the Dharma, the doctrine, benefiting the teachings. Benefiting beings and benefiting teachings. Bodhisattvas, on the bodhisattva path, some bodhisattvas exclusively benefit beings after they have benefited themselves. In other words, after they've had that, maybe that path of seeing, that realization of the Buddha nature, then they enter into a lifestyle that enriches that quality of mind by benefiting beings, kind of as a sort of a bodhisattva in action in that sense. Other bodhisattvas, with that, from that same, that same stance, benefit the Dharma by doing Dharma activity. But nowadays, I say this because many we hear now, and it's not something new. Just a limited, my limited understanding of how our Buddhist tradition, particularly the Himalayan Buddhism, Tibetan Buddhism, many bodhisattvas diverted from the classical or the doctrine, the Dharma path, not the Dharma path, but the teachings path, and just went off and became like shoemakers or whatever, just like in the old days of the Indian Mahasiddhas, where you had blacksmiths and sesame seed sellers and prostitutes and every which way people. And some took the path of preserving, upholding, and protecting and propagating the teachings of the path to awakening. So sometimes you might see that as a twofold. But here, he doesn't even mention, I'm saying that here, so I kind of lost my track. Perfectly secures the welfare of myself. Oh, right, okay, myself. Okay, I was excusing or apologizing for Shantideva using, not apologizing, I was speaking of why this is the case. He says, by pleasing others, then you gain benefit and happiness, which matures or which fructifies into being able to benefit others more, to please sentient beings and the Buddhas even more. And then your merit increases, your joy increases, your realization increases, your virtue and capacity, power, strength, stamina increases, and you're able to increase more. It's called, on the Bodhisattva path, it's called the ever-increasing wheel of virtue, is how the Bodhisattvas carry out their beneficial activity, is through this ever-turning wheel of virtue, ever-increasing wheel of virtue. And this will drive away the sorrows of the world. So that's how bodhisattvas will benefit others. This serving them will drive away the sorrows of the world by making others happy. And when people are happy and comfortable and content, of course these are three different things, but when people are happy, they tend to make better choices in how they apply their body, speech, and mind in their lives. And so the karma they'll create their own benefit and happiness and be led eventually to the path of awakening. This will drive benefiting others and making them happy, he's saying, will drive away the sorrows of the world in that way, and it will foster our own qualities that are happy qualities, good qualities. And so then he resolves here at the last one line saying, and therefore it will be my constant work. So this is something benefiting others either by thought, a word, or deed. I will diligently do this all the time. That's my goal, that's my resolution, that's my goal, is to diligently always think, to help, to be kind, to practice love and compassion, and rejoice for others and benefit them in any way I can. So whatever else we may do that is kind of the our karmic path, our karmic path, whether we're, president of a CEO of a corporation, or maybe a CEO of a really big corporation. I guess anybody could be a CEO now, even if it's just one person. But, big corporation or president of a country or something. Whatever our karma, our karma is for how we participate in our society, in our world, in our culture, whether it's from that way or running a bowling alley or standing on a freeway ramp with a sign, whatever we are, this drive, this thrust towards benefiting others, if we make that resolution, that's what will equalize whatever our karma has in store for us, so to speak. We can't really, I don't know about cannot, but we don't have, in other words, whatever causes we have created in the past, body, speech, and mind, attachment, aversion, stupidity, the fruition of those is ineluctable. It is not something that can be stopped. But at its occurrence, it can be, that's the point of what we could say, if we're interested in terms like free will, that point is what we can apply to change our karma. It's not that we're just these victims of karma until some epiphany occurs. But every moment is not simply the effect of a previous moment. It's not simply the effect of a previous action. It's also the cause. The same result also becomes a cause. And if it's a cause, then we can add our mind to it, our motivation, and change. And so making resolutions carries over from 1 hour, from morning. Our morning resolution affects our afternoon afternoon resolutions affects our evenings. When we go to sleep, before we sleep, we make resolutions. It affects our dreams, and so on and so forth. We're always making aspirations and resolutions. It's like creating seeds out of thin air. Just out of the blessings of the three jewels, we're able to make resolutions. We're able to, I guess, maybe we, and by the jargon these days, is reinvent ourselves. Reinvent ourselves in the mold of the Buddhas and Bodhisattvas. And so he says here, then I'll diligently do this. This, therefore, will be my constant work. Like Gary Snyder, he says it's the real work. We have our karmic, I don't know what else he said, but the idea is, like I was just saying, we have our, whatever work we do, whatever role we play, whatever part we play in the drama of our own lives, we have there's certain limitations. But regardless of those limitations, the real work is on our motivation, on our mind. And if you've gotten this far in the Dharma, then you've got what it takes, definitely. 128, okay, this one. Now, these verses, I'll read here. Imagine that the steward of a king does injury to multitudes of people. Those with clear, far-seeing eyes do not respond with violence, even if they can. For stewards, after all, are not alone. They are supported by the kingly power. Again, it's a little hard to even the 19th century commentators are still in this world. And so it's a no-brainer to say things like this. So just like that, it says, therefore, I will not despise the feeble beings tormenting me. So I'll never, feeble beings like mosquitoes and bees and spider bites, and I will never retaliate or even underestimate them. They become those who I am most concerned about. These examples here are I don't want to diminish the wisdom of Shantideva, but using these kinds of things, we have to use our imagination to see, what is he talking about? Like, if people are bothering us, all we need to do is like protest and make signs and go out and demand our rights. That's unjust, and dethrone the king and these things. That's modernistic thinking. That kind of thinking I can only think that it was inconceivable during the time of pre-modern, the introduction of modernistic thinking. So we have to appreciate that in kind of drawing comparisons. The idea of, like I think I mentioned last week, we're so programmed, brainwashed into modernism. Or I shouldn't say we're so, as if I have something to say after that. I'm saying we're very brainwashed into modernism. Modernism is a way of global, it's a very consumer driven cultural demand that also brings with it a certain new kind of freedom, a certain concepts like individual freedom or individual rights. All these things are completely new. And they have their own problems. It's a new delusion that we find ourselves in. And it's no different, it's just as much a delusion of living in pre-modernistic times. The threat is that we make certain assumptions that we actually have individual freedom in an external way. That we have what are referred to as kind of God-given rights. So from a Buddhist point of view, I can't really speak about that, but as a practitioner, it's our mind that's the most important thing. And we want to be able in the future to have a good mind that has a beneficial thrust in wherever we may wind up, irregardless of the environment, the politics, the economics, the heat, the cold. We want to make resolutions and create determination in our mind stream that will carry us through and become a benefactor to others in whatever circumstances, even if we wind up experiencing the karma of being born in hell. Just like a Buddha Shakyamuni, even though he was in hell, at a certain point, he just had an instant of the traces of a previous resolution to benefit others. It just sprung out towards another suffering person. And then he became liberated from that realm and went on to become Buddha Shakyamuni. It was Buddha Shakyamuni's recollection of one of his previous lives. So that we want to create in this life, as long as short as it might be, that kind of thrust in our mind. Like Dodrup Chen says, if we can develop love and compassion in the suffering of this life, then in the future, no matter what realm we wind up going through, it'll be like a walk in the park. That's kind of the power of the bodhicitta. It's not just a made-up aspiration, but it's based on our nature. It's based on our potential. It's not just a separate concept from the true nature of the way things are. So it will always have a beneficial effect. So here then he says, so we shouldn't underestimate the smallest little inconvenience. Because just like the evil general or the evil minister or the evil king has what is it called? Has backup, has backup. They've got power behind them. They're, just like that, beings, they have backup. He says here, it's as though they're allies. In other words, it's as though those irritators, those that are irritating us, they have allies, and their allies are what he calls here the guardians of hell, and also the compassionate Buddhas. Therefore, living beings I will gratify, as subjects might placate a wrathful king. So just like that. Guardians of hell meaning, like if I mistreat a sentient being, then sentient beings have, as a metaphor, they're backed up by the guardians of hell. In other words, if I have anger and act on that anger towards a sentient being, I'm the one that goes to the suffering realms of a hellish suffering. So it's as if he's saying, well, think like that. Just like you don't mess with somebody who has way more power than you do, because they've got backup. So sentient beings, even little fleas and mosquitoes, they've got backup. They've got backup that will harm us, not the mosquito. That we can put up with. But if we mistreat or kill even a small sentient being, as a metaphor, they're backed up by the guardians of hell. I don't know if this is coming across, but that's think about it if you want. And yet, wait a minute. Wait. And yet, the pains of hell to be endured through making living beings suffer, could these ever be unleashed on me by all the ire of such a king? Okay, so I think, so here, as it mentions earlier in the text in a different context, he's drawing a comparison like, all the suffering that other sentient beings can do to me, other people or so forth, objects that I might direct my aggression and hatred towards, my aggression and hatred are worse for me than anything that others may do to me. They can only kill me. But my aggression, my hatred, and my actions, my verbal actions, will cause me, my mind, to suffer many times over, again and again in the future. So, like, just a mere king, a mere tyrant, can only harm me in this life, but I can harm me in many lifetimes. Okay, I'm getting. In other words, the example of the king and the placating the king and everything, the reality is it's far greater than that. Okay, then the next verse. On the other hand, or even if that king were pleased, on the other hand, even if that king were pleased, enlightenment he could not give me. In other words, somebody who has lots of power and backup, if you please them, all they can do is give you wealth, position, spread good, spread good rumors about you, plant store, people have these communication officers, who, okay, you're a terrible person, but nobody will know it because we're going to, saturate the world with how great you are. That's all they can do for you, They can't bring you to enlightenment. This will only be achieved by bringing happiness to beings. Okay, Keep it simple. That's the point. So think about that as far as the previous examples and things. No need to mention future Buddhahood, achieved through bringing happiness to beings. How can I not see that glory, fame, and pleasure, even in this life, will likewise come? So it's not that, like I was just mentioning before about this ever-increasing wheel of virtue and good fortune. By bringing happiness to beings and pleasing the Buddhas, rejoicing the Buddhas, then of course it leads to Buddhahood, but also it helps in this life. Temporary fruits come in this life, and those fruits then can become the foundation for the rising of excellences. Then if we have this kind of, if we achieve this sort of the serenity, the peaceful, calm mind by always thinking about benefiting others, and about, in this section here, and about rejoicing the minds of the Buddhas, then whatever situation arises, whatever company we're in, our thought will always be consistent. How to help here, how to contribute to the improvement, to the benefit of this situation, or these people, or this company, these companies of people. And your mind will be undisturbed. And of course, having the undisturbed mind that projects this beneficial quality, this love and compassion. It's not a desperate wish to benefit others. It's actually the machinery of love and compassion operating. That will have that alone will benefit others. Even simply to be or hear of a sane person is an encouragement to others. So even just to not say or not do anything but have that attitude may be perceived as sanity and give people hope in their own, the resolution of their own lives. For patience in samsara brings such things as beauty, health, and good renown. So patience in samsara, that's a good, they use that. Sometimes we think of like the paramita of patience as sort of like a other level or other reality, but samsara is where you're patient. And patience, and according to the teachings of the paramita, here it talks about patient, beauty, health, and good renown. That is there's some specificity there of that very attractive, easy to look at, and people that beauty, as he puts it here, is the karmic result, the physical fruition of a mental karma of patience. And health, also we know as being the karmic result, the karmic, the samsaric result of nonviolence, ahimsa, not harming, which is one of the first injunctions or the first precepts of taking refuge, becoming a Buddhist, is non-harming. And so the karma of that is to be free of, to have good health in the future. From that karma of abstaining from harm. Action has results, and intentional non-action has results. So not harming has a result, and the result is health. That's why we say when we're sick on the Bodhisattva path, we should rejoice at being sick, because we are experiencing the results of harming others in the past. And so we should open up the truth of that and confess and practice purification, so that result doesn't perpetuate the cause. We say, well, if you're sick and you can and just purify, doing some purification practice at the same time as you follow the medical regimen, two-pronged approach. If you need one, maybe it's just you overate or something, but you do the health correction on an outer level, but never neglect the true cause. We relieve the symptoms if they're a nuisance, and purify the cause, the karmic cause. So anyway, going on. Then beauty, health, that's health, and then good renown. Good renown is the result of benefiting others, pleasing and being kind and benefiting others. And its fruit, meaning patience. The first line says, for patience bring such things. So its fruit is great longevity and a happy life. The vast contentment of a universal king, which means, basically it's a euphemism, like say, for when we have the qualities, these qualities that come from patience, then we are able to, just like a universal king, say, we are able to, by many means, establish others on the path of virtue. So the results of patience have a samsaric application that is desirable for us. We could say, training our mind in patience makes our effort at liberating all sentient beings easier. In that sense. It's like Songtsen Gampo, the first Dharma, during the Dharma, in Tibet, there's one, the golden age of Dharma in Tibet was, the first king was Songtsen Gampo. and he instituted, and they made pillars and things. The first time there were any sort of social rules in Tibet. Like it was suddenly he adopted these 16 rules of proper social conduct, like no killing. It's just a country that didn't have those kind of rules. It's hard for us to, like I say, anyway, I'm not going to go into that again, but it's just whatever you want, It's that kind of a country. We could say it was very free. And as we might notice, even though we may idealize freedom as a virtue or as a goal, historically, freedom meant whoever was the strongest controlled who was the weaker people. So Songtsen Gampo, he, as a Dharma being, as the Dharma king, he devised rules like no killing, no stealing, no infidelity. All these things disrupt society. We want to practice Dharma here, and the first way to practice Dharma is to give up negative actions. And how you give up negative actions is to recognize that there's a difference between right and wrong. It's not just who's the strongest person is right. Whatever the strong one says, then that's right, Whoever holds the gun, they're right, Whatever they say, they're right, no question. Anyway, so that's the ability to be able to draw people to virtue. It takes, Songtsen Gampo, it took a lot. But he was sort of that kind of power for what was he, probably 19 or 20 years old, something like that. Just like also Chusen Detsen was young, also. So there's something else going on there, that like the fruition of great virtue of patience. Now it's later. So that's the conclusion of this chapter. Again, this chapter is how to prevent our path of awakening to become distorted or corrupted or to be damaged or destroyed or degenerate. And that, again, that happens through carefulness, chapter 4, by mindfulness and introspection, chapter 5, and by patience. And we should be aware, just like in the very beginning of Dharma practice, or taking refuge, or being interested in Dharma even, we should be aware, learn, and pay attention to what's the difference between Dharma and between, how do I say, what is worldliness and what is Dharma? Worldliness means having what's called the 8 worldly concerns, that we're concerned we're concerned about loss, we're concerned about gain, profit. That's a concern. We act concerned about that as a sort of the driving force of our participation in the world. It's worldly. We're concerned about fame. We're concerned about doing things to be well known. We're concerned about, on the other side, preventing a bad reputation or no reputation. We're concerned about being obscure, unknown, being obscure. No one knows me. And we concern and act to prevent that, and then act to make fame happen. That's worldly. We are concerned about comfort, and we strive and engage to be comfortable. And we are concerned about pain and discomfort, and we strive and are concerned and to prevent pain, discomfort, pleasure, pain, say. And we are concerned about praise. We do things in some percentage of measure, and we calculate how we do things in such a way that we'll be praised. And we are concerned about, on the other hand, being blamed. And we calculate and try to prevent being blamed. Lying and killing, destroying evidence, all of these things. So these are the 8 worldly concerns. And we should know that Dharma is engaging in the world such as it is, with the intention to awaken to Buddhahood, thinking about Buddha as you go to work, as you engage in conversations, as you build relationships, so forth. And then on top of that is the Mahayana motivation of bodhicitta, benefiting sentient beings, in order to attain enlightenment, in order for them to attain enlightenment, and in order for you to attain enlightenment, for oneself to attain enlightenment. Then that's the Dharma path. So there's a difference, and from the outside you can't tell. Like Paltra Rinpoche or Khenpo Ngaksun in the commentary says, you can't tell if it's not the hair and the staff. In other words, it's not because you have a shaved head and have a monk or a staff. That's not the difference. That's not what distinguishes a worldly person from a Dharma person. It's not the hair and the robes, we could say. It's that, And so that means that there's since we're sort of embedded in the 8 worldly concerns, we're trained in the 8 worldly concerns, then from the point of view of a Dharma practitioner, orienting ourselves towards awakening, then we need to have more and more of a sense of renunciation for these 8 worldly concerns, for the results of these 8 worldly concerns. A little world weariness or disenchantment with those, and we contemplate impermanence and suffering and causation in order to, through the analysis of samsara, develop turn our minds away from being concerned with the results of these 8 worldly preoccupations, and or become preoccupied preoccupied by the aspiration to attain enlightenment as a way to benefit sentient beings. From that, from our subtle attachment and aversion that's embedded in our concerns, our worldly concerns, then that's where anger, or that's where dissatisfaction comes from our subtle attachment and aversion to these 8 worldly concerns. We become dissatisfied. And from that dissatisfaction, then the poison of the mind arises of anger. And so we need to practice patience when it does arise, and also work on the root, the qualities of renunciation. And with renunciation, there is also the arising of compassion. And of course, compassion also is inseparable from wisdom. And so patience, practicing patience, and using the presence of patience as a vehicle, as a delivery of kindness out of compassion and love for others, wishing for others' happiness, it brings a wisdom there's an inseparable wisdom within that. So I'm embarrassed teaching this chapter, particularly this chapter. It's very kind of embarrassing to me. It's difficult for me to study this and to see my own challenges and my kind of hypocrisy is so glaring to me. But I hope that something kind of came through from Shantideva. I hope I didn't personally, make it kind of, what is it called, self-referencing. I try not to do that, and just kind of be a conduit for the transmission of Shantideva's teachings. So I just hope and pray that you overlook, like it's taught, don't listen to the teacher, listen to the teachings. Don't listen to the words of the teachings, listen to the meaning of the teachings. And don't just listen to the meaning of the teachings, but listen to the real purpose, the real true meaning of the teachings, the ultimate meaning of the teaching. So with that as my protection, then I'm happy to have completed these 3 chapters. And so we'll dedicate the merit of the practice of listening to the teachings. All the virtue of this practice and all that is gathered throughout the 3 times I dedicate to all beings without exception, so that they may attain Buddhahood. Following and emulating the omniscient and courageous Manjushri, and likewise Samantabhadra, I completely dedicate all virtue. Since dedicating merit is praised as supreme by victorious ones of the 3 times, I completely dedicate these roots of virtue for the sake of practicing excellent conduct. May the teachings of Lord Buddha, the only source of benefit and happiness, long remain in this world. May the lives of those who uphold these teachings be as stable as a victory banner. Supreme Bodhicitta is so very precious. Where it has not yet arisen, may it arise. Where it has arisen, may it not decline. but evermore grow and flourish.